Hello, fellow classmates. My name is Jose Guerrero. I was assigned Dred Scott. You will be leaving this presentation knowing more about Dred Scott and how he had an impact on slavery, civil rights, and even the Civil War. Dred Scott was born around the 1800s in Virginia and died in 1858 due to tuberculosis at the age around 58. He was born into slavery, was owned by the Blows family. The family and Dred Scott moved to Alabama in 1818. Later they moved to St. Louis, Missouri in 1830 to run a boarding house, which is basically a hotel. Sadly, by 1832, the owner, Peter Blow, died. After the death of Dred Scott's previous owner, he was later bought by an assistant army surgeon named Dr. Emerson. Dred Scott and Dr. Emerson moved to Illinois. After a few years, they eventually moved to the upper part of Mississippi, which was Wisconsin Territory at the time being, to Fort Snelling, which is now known as Minnesota. While Dred Scott was at Fort Snelling, he found his love, which was Harriet Robinson, who was surprisingly 15 years younger than him. They then got married and had a kid later on who was a girl. Dred Scott and his wife went to St. Louis, but Dr. Emerson went to Florida. Unfortunately, Dr. Emerson died in Florida, so in result, the control of Dred Scott, his wife, and daughter went to Mrs. Emerson. Dred Scott saw this as an opportunity to gain his freedom. He first offered Mrs. Emerson $300, but she refused the offer. After that, he tried to get his freedom through the courts. He began the process in 1846. The main basis of the case was that he was once on a slave-free state, which technically meant he was once a free man. Unfortunately, Dred Scott lost his first trial on a technicality. It was that he couldn't prove that Miss S. Emerson owned them. Luckily, he did win the second trial, but devastation struck again. The Missouri State Supreme Court overturned the decision. The main issue for the Supreme Court was that they needed to find out if Dred Scott was an authentic U.S. citizen. The Supreme Court chose to declare the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional, which was basically the restriction of slavery in certain parts or territories. They also found out during the trial that he wasn't a citizen because he was black, therefore he didn't have the right to sue an American court. The decision of the case was that no one with an American slave in their family tree could not be an American citizen at all, and therefore could not sue an American court. This was because Article 3 stated that no one but a citizen of the U.S. can be a citizen of the state, and the only people that were able to give national citizenship was the Congress. That was the reasoning of Judge Taney for the Dred Scott v. Sandford case. One thing the case did for America was declaring the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional. This happened because the justices believed that if they allowed slavery anywhere, the slavery question would go to sleep. The other reason for declaring the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional because it violated the Fifth Amendment, which stated that no one's property, life, and/or liberty can be taken away without due process. And because slaves were thought as property and treated like property, therefore the Congress was not able to prohibit slavery. There were after effects for his family after the case. After the trial, Peter Blow's son, which was the childhood friend of Dred Scott, helped Dred Scott pay his legal fees through the years and months. After the Supreme Court decision, Mr. Emerson's son bought Dred Scott's family. He then freed Dred Scott's family, Sadly, Dred Scott died a few months later. He died due to tuberculosis, but he left the legacy of how that we have to do something about slavery, and it wasn't through the courts. We had to act. He eventually got put in the St. Louis Walk of Fame for his bravery to fight for his freedom. There were also side effects of the decision for the whole country, not only for the Scott family. One of those side effects of the decision were that the Northerners were outraged because this meant that slavery also could spread to the newly found Western states, which meant free labor, therefore meant their companies could not compete with the South's. Another effect was that the Missouri Compromise was declared unconstitutional. The Missouri Compromise was the compromise that restricted slavery in certain states or territories. This was a huge effect because it could potentially end the slavery question. Another side effect of the case's decision was that it served as a great influence in the election of Abraham Lincoln for the Republican Party, because he was against slavery and therefore Northerners wanted him in office to prevent free labor. This caused a chain reaction which at the end produced the succession of the Southern states from the Union. This also added 4 years to the burning Civil War due to the outrage of the Northerners. The Dred Scott case was also important to the U.S. as a whole because this helped the nomination of Abraham Lincoln for the Republican Party and eventually for the office, which then ended slavery. This case also caused the succession of the Southern states from the Union, which burned a few years into the Civil War. This case also made popular sovereignty the main way if a law would be passed in a certain state. This was an important change for the future American states. This case also caused the declaration of the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional, which meant that slavery couldn't be prohibited in any territories because it was a violation of the Fifth Amendment. This case also showed how even if slaves resided on free land, they were considered property still, not as citizens, therefore not able to gain legal freedom. This case also showed how something needed to be done about slavery and it wasn't going to be through the courts.